friends, and welcome back to Chinese history and mythology. Last time, we talked about how the four-state alliance of Song, Lu, Kai, and Wei launched a major campaign against Xin. In the end, they were stopped at Daling by Zhou, who led the Xin army in person. Nobody could really gain the upper hand, so the four states had to pull their troops back and go home. On the way back, Duke Zhao of Wei, the former Prince Zhou, heard that a coup had broken out inside Wei. He could not go home anymore, so he changed direction and ran to the state of Qi to seek help from his uncle, Duke Xiang of Qi. There, he made a very clear promise. If Duke Xiang could help him get his throne back, he would hand over all the treasures and jades stored in the inner palace and the state treasury of Wei and give them to Qi. Duke Xiang of Qi agreed to take his nephew in, but at the same time, he was busy with something else. He was asking the son of heaven of Zhou for a royal marriage, hoping to marry the royal princess, the Wang Ji, and he wanted Duke Wan of Lu to act as the go-between and host the marriage on behalf of the Zhou court. In order not to offend Wei, but also not to send out troops right away, he quietly pushed the plan to attack Wei to the side for the moment. Instead, he sent his minister, Gongsun Wuji, to escort the Wei Prince Zhou back to Wei, and there they used the trap of heavy drinking to force Prince Zhou and Yuanjiang together as a couple. In this way, Xuanjiang, who had once been the official wife of Duke Xuan of Wei, became the wife of Prince Zhou, and later gave birth to several more children. The family relationships in this branch of the Wei ruling house became even more tangled and hard to untie. Over in Xin, things looked calm on the surface. The four-state alliance had just been driven away, but under the surface, the currents were already moving. Zhou kept thinking about one big plan. He wanted to go to Qi and make an alliance, and then, through Qi, pull in Lu as well, so that Qin, Lu, and Xing could stand together and balance the power of Song. With this idea in mind, he asked for permission to go to Qi as Xing's envoy. But as soon as he left the capital, trouble broke out. Gao Qihumi and others took their chance to launch a coup. First, they secretly brought back Ziwei, a prince of the Zheng house who had been living in exile. Then, on a winter day, when Duke Zhao of Zheng went out of the city to perform a suburban sacrifice, they set an ambush on the road and killed him halfway. To the outside world, they simply said that Duke Zhao had run into bandits and died on the road. Inside, they quickly put Ziwei on the throne as the new ruler of Zhang, and in the new ruler's name, they sent a summons to call Zhou back, telling him to return and govern together with Zhao Qumi. When Su Dongpo read this part in Chronicles of the Eastern Zhou kingdoms many centuries later, he sighed. Duke Zhao of Zheng had seen clearly, long before, that Zhao Qumi was a hidden danger. But in both of his turns on the throne, he never found the courage to get rid of him. In the end, he died by Gao Qiami's hand. It was not that he could not judge people. It was that his nature was too soft and hesitant, and he left room for a traitor to strike. So now that Pao Yinzeng has passed into the hands of Ziwei, where will the state of Zheng go from here? We are now moving into one of the most tangled and uncomfortable chapters of the story, where Duke Zhuang of Lu, Duke Zhang of Qi, and King Zhuang of Zhou all get pulled into a chain of events that becomes messier at every step. Let us start from the Qi side. When Duke Xiang of Qi saw that Zhou, the chief minister of Zheng, had personally come to discuss an alliance, he was genuinely pleased. Why? Because Zhou was not just any minister. He was a one-man in Zheng whose word actually counted. If Zhou came in person to talk diplomacy, it meant Zheng truly wanted an alliance with Qi, not just empty talk. The two men sat down to discuss, and their ideas matched almost instantly. Qi and Zheng would form a solid alliance. In the future, whether they had to deal with Song or deal with Zhang Ligong, both sides would look after each other. Duke Xiang and Zhou both felt the meeting had been completely worthwhile. They were about to summon scribes to draft the documents and send the good news back to Xin. But right at that moment, a messenger rushed in with urgent news. Duke Xiang opened the report and froze. A rebellion had already broken out inside Xingzhou. Gao Qumi had risen in revolt, killed Duke Zhao of Zheng, and put Ziwei on the throne as the new ruler. After reading the report, Duke Zhang was furious. His first thought was, I just made peace with Duke Zhao of Zheng, and I just agreed to this alliance with Zhou. Now your ministers turn around and murder him, and switch rulers. What does that make my state look like? How am I supposed to hold my face as the ruler of Qi? With Duke Xiang's temper, he truly wanted to send the army out immediately and march straight into Zheng to avenge Duke Zhao. But then another problem came to mind. Duke Wan of Lu and his wife, Wenjiang, were on their way to Kiev. The Son of Heaven had already agreed to marry the royal princess to Duke Xiang, naming Duke Wan of Lu as the man to handle the marriage arrangements. This was not just any marriage. It was a royal marriage presided over by the Zhou king. The rituals and status were extremely important. One side was an urgent matter of punishment. The other was a royal wedding that could not be delayed. These two things were impossible to do at the same time. Duke Xiang had to set punishment and revenge aside for the moment. He had to swallow his anger and focus on receiving the guests from Lu. He personally went to the banks of the Luo River to welcome Duke Wan and Wenjiang. Now, let us shift the scene to Lu. Wenjiang, the wife of Duke Wan of Lu, was Duke Xiang's own younger sister. When she heard that Qi had sent envoys to invite Duke Wan and had specifically asked for her to come along, it stirred up all the old feelings she had toward her homeland and toward her older brother. She immediately began acting sweet and pleading with Duke Wan, saying she wanted to return to Qi with him. According to ritual norms, a married woman could return home to visit her parents once a year. That was proper. But now when Jiang's parents were both gone, if she returned home, she would only be going to see her brother, and that was not really in line with the rules of ritual. Shen Shu, a senior minister in Lu who understood ritual very well, advised Duke Wan. He said, "A woman has her husband's home after she marries. A man has his own household to manage. This is the tradition passed down from ancient times. Ritual is not something that can be bent whenever we feel like it. If we break it once, everything falls out of order." Since the lady's parents have passed away, going back now would only be to see her brother. That is not the proper way. Our state of Lu has always prided itself on following the rites. If we do something improper, everyone will notice it. My lord, you should withdraw the command. But Duke Wan adored Wenjiang deeply. He had already promised she could go. He could not bear the thought of letting her down, so he ignored Shen Shu's advice and insisted on taking her to Kiev. Soon, the couple prepared their ceremonial carriage and entourage and set out toward Qi. When they reached the riverbank at Luo, Duke Xiang of Qi was already there waiting in person. The three of them met beside the water. They exchanged polite greetings, spoke a little about how long it had been since they last saw each other, and then climbed into their carriages together to head toward the capital of Qi, the city of Linzi. Once they arrived in Linzi, they handled business first. Duke Wan conveyed the message of the Son of Heaven and finalized the marriage between Duke Zhang and the royal princess. Duke Xiang was extremely pleased and grateful to Lu for handling this for him. He threw a grand banquet to welcome Duke Wan and Wenjiang. The tables were filled with rich dishes, and the whole hall was full of noise and laughter. But while everyone else was drinking and talking, Duke Xiang's thoughts were already drifting toward the inner palace. He was thinking about how to get his sister alone. Before long, he invited Wenjiang into the back palace. He said he wanted her to visit some of the palace ladies she used to know and catch up. But he had already prepared a hidden room ahead of time, set with wine and food, arranged completely in secret. Once Wenjiang entered the inner palace, Duke Xiang brought her into that secluded room. They sat down, drinking and talking about their childhood in Kiev, the years they grew up together, the day she married into Lu, and everything that had happened since. As the wine went down, the conversation grew softer. The looks between them became longer. Their eyes locked, and neither of them looked away. Whatever feelings they had buried years ago had never truly disappeared. Now with wine in their blood and a room with closed doors, nothing could hold them back. No one spoke of brother and sister. No one mentioned ritual or propriety. They simply let everything go. They undressed each other, held each other tightly, and spent the entire night together. They did not get up, even when the sun rose high the next morning. The whole inner palace had only these two people. As for Duke Wan, he slept alone in his guest quarters. He had come as an honored guest, but by the next morning he had become the one left out and ignored. Of course, Duke Wan became suspicious. When he learned that When Zhang had spent the entire night inside the inner palace, he sensed that something was very wrong. He quietly sent someone to investigate, asking the man to see what was really going on in the palace. The man went in, looked around, and then returned to report. He said, "I have checked carefully. Duke Xiang has never formally taken an official wife. He only has one concubine living in a side chamber. She is the sister of Minister Lian Cheng. Duke Xiang does not seem to care for her much and rarely sleeps with her. Yesterday, the lady said she was going to greet the palace women she used to know, but she did not really meet anyone. She spent most of the time talking with Duke Xiang. Everything he said was enough for Duke Wan to understand." It was clear what had happened. Duke Wan's heart burned with shame and anger. But because this touched the dignity of a ruling house, he could not cause a scene on the spot. He held it in and waited. Before long, someone came to report, "The lady has left the inner palace." Duke Wan forced himself to stay calm and summoned Wen Jiang. As soon as she arrived, he asked straight out, "Last night, in the Qi Palace, who were you drinking with?" Wen Jiang tried to put on a brave face and answered, "I was drinking with Lady Lian." Duke Wan continued, "And when did the gathering end?" Wen Jiang said, "We had not seen each other in a long time, so we talked a lot. It went on until late at night before we stopped." Duke Wan asked again, "Did your brother, Duke Xiang, come over to join you?" When Jiang said, "No," Duke Wan gave a cold laugh and asked, "If he never came, does that not strike you as strange? You drink and talk in his palace, and he never shows his face." When Jiang scrambled to explain, "He did come. He offered us a cup of wine and then left." The more Duke Wan listened, the colder he felt. He pressed again, after the gathering ended, "Why did you not leave the palace earlier?" When Jiang's tone grew sharp, it was already late. "I stayed to rest." "Is that not allowed?" Duke Wan pushed further. "Then where did you sleep last night?" Now when Jiang was losing her temper, "What is wrong with you? You ask one thing after another. The palace has many rooms. Am I not allowed to rest anywhere? I slept in the West Palace, where I used to live before my marriage." Duke Wan asked one more crucial question. "Then why did you wake up so late today?" When Jiang said, "I drank too much and talked too much yesterday. I was tired. That is why." Finally, Duke Wan asked, "Then tell me clearly, who slept with you in that room last night?" When Jiang said, "Of course, the palace maids." Duke Wan asked, "Then, where did your brother, Duke Xiang, sleep last night?" The question hit the place when Jiang feared most. Her face flushed, and she forced herself to say, "Why would a sister concern herself with where her brother sleeps?" "That is a foolish question," Duke Wan answered with a cold voice. "I am afraid it is not the sister who is concerned with where the brother sleeps. It is the brother who concerns himself very closely with where the sister is sleeping." When Jiang heard the meaning immediately and snapped, "What do you mean by that?" Duke Wan no longer hid anything. He said, "Since ancient times, men and women must keep proper distance. You spent the night in the inner palace. You and your brother slept together. I already know it. Do not deny it any longer." When Jiang still refused to admit anything, she cried and said she was being wronged, but deep down she knew very clearly that there was no way to hide it anymore. During the next few days, Inqiwan of Lu did not mention this matter again in front of her, but in his heart he had already made up his mind. Once they returned to Lu, he would have to deal with Wen Jiang. He could not pretend nothing had happened. Over on Duke Xiang of Qi's side, he also faintly felt that he had gone too far this time. After Wen Jiang left the palace, he did not feel at ease. He secretly sent a strong man called Qiji Fenru to follow at a distance and listen in on what Duke Wan and Wen Jiang said when they met again. When Qiji Fenru came back, he reported, "I heard the Lord of Lu and his wife arguing. The Lord of Lu pressed the lady and asked her if she had slept with you. The lady was crying, while denying it with her mouth." When Duke Xiang heard this, his heart tightened and sweat came out on his forehead. He understood at once that Duke Wan already knew the truth. The only reason he had not exploded was simply that he was still in Qi and could not turn the table right there. Not long after, the Lu envoys came to take their leave and said that the Lord of Lu wished to return home. Duke Xiang could no longer pretend to be relaxed. This confirmed for him that the matter had already been exposed. At this point, two thoughts were twisting together in his mind. On one hand, he could not bear to part with Wenjiang. On the other hand, he was afraid that once Duke Wan returned to Lu, he would turn hostile. After thinking it over, he decided to go all the way and cut the problem off at the root. So Duke Xiang secretly summoned Prince Pengsheng and said, "When the farewell banquet is over, you will escort the Lord of Lu out of the city. On the road, you will sit in the same carriage with him and find a way to get rid of him inside the carriage." Who was Peng Sheng? He was a fierce general of Qi. Back in the great battle against Ji, he had been wounded by Lu arrows and had held a grudge ever since. When he heard he could personally lay hands on the Lord of Lu this time, he even felt a dark kind of joy and agreed at once. Soon, the farewell banquet at Niushan began. Duke Xiang held the feast on Mount Ninyu. The scenery on the hill was beautiful, and the food and wine were rich. He set out many dishes and called in singers and dancers. The scene was lively and loud. He was extremely attentive to Duke Wan and kept raising his cup to toast him. But Duke Wan of Lu felt no joy at all. To him, all the fine dishes and good wine had lost their flavor. His heart was full of anger and humiliation. Since Duke Xiang kept sending people over to urge him to drink, he simply decided to drown his feelings in wine. As long as someone raised a cup, he drank it. Before long, he was completely drunk. He could barely speak clearly. By the time the banquet ended, Duke Wan could not even stand on his own, much less climb into a carriage. Duke Xiang ordered Prince Pengsheng to carry him into the carriage. Pengsheng took the opportunity to get into the same carriage and slowly rode out of Lindsay with him. When the carriage was about to leave outside the city, Duke Wan was so drunk that he had no awareness at all. He lay there limp in the carriage. Pengsheng saw that the moment had come. He reached out one huge, powerful hand, grabbed Duke Wan by the ribs, and twisted hard. The force of that grip was tremendous. He snapped Duke Wan's ribs with his bare hand. Duke Wan was jolted awake by the pain and cried out. But in a short while, from the pain and blood loss, he died right there in the carriage. The inside of the carriage was covered in blood. Pengsheng shouted to the men traveling with them. The Lord of Lu got drunk and suddenly fell under an evil spell. He has stopped breathing. Hurry back and report to our Lord. The attendants from Lu felt the whole thing was strange, but none of them dared say a word of protest to this terrifying general. They could only do as he said. When Duke Xiang heard that the Lord of Lu had died suddenly in the carriage, he put on a show of grief in front of others. He cried loudly and ordered that a grand funeral be held for Duke Wan. He had a coffin made and sent a message back to Lu, telling them to come and escort the coffin home. When the servants of Lu returned, they told Minister Shenshu every detail of what had happened in the carriage. After Shenshu heard it, he knew there was no way to undo what had been done. He spoke one very important sentence first. He said, "A state cannot go a single day without a ruler." Now that the Lord of Lu has been killed, the Crown Prince Tong should step forward at once to lead the mourning and manage the major affairs. When the coffin reaches Lu, we can then hold the succession ceremony. There was another man in Lu called Prince Kingfu. He was the eldest son by a concubine of Duke Wan and was known by the courtesy name Meng. When he heard how unjustly his father had died, he slapped the table and said to Shenshu, "The Lord of Qi committed incest and ignored all reason. He killed my father. Give me 300 war chariots and I will lead the troops to punish Kiev." Shenshu did not entirely reject Prince Kingfu's anger, but he knew the situation was more complicated. He quietly went to ask the strategist Shibo, "Do you think we can send troops against Qi right now?" Shibo replied with a cool head, "This whole matter is the result of an improper relationship. If we send out a large army to openly attack Qi, the scandal will spread even further. Also, our strength in Lu is not equal to Qi right now. If we go to war and lose, not only will we fail to avenge our former lord, the shame of this affair will become the talk of all the lords. I think it is better to endure for the moment." He went on, "We can first find out the exact details of how the Lord of Lu died in the carriage, then write a formal state letter. In that letter, we will ask Qi to execute Prince Pengsheng on the spot and use his head to answer to the world. In this way, our state will have an explanation to show, and Qi will have no argument in terms of justice. They will have to agree. Shen Shu thought this plan was steady and sound. He went to explain it to Prince Kingfu and persuaded him not to rush into war. Then he called in Shibo and asked him to draft the state letter. This letter was written in the name of the ministers because Crown Prince Tong was in mourning and could not appear in public personally. The envoy took the letter to Qi. Duke Xiang read it and saw that the main meaning was, "We, the ministers of Lu, bow before the Lord of Qi. Our ruler accepted the command of the Son of Heaven and came to your state to discuss this great marriage. He did not dare delay in our own land. Now he went out and did not return. Rumor says something happened to him in the carriage. We do not have enough proof to openly accuse your state, but all the lords are talking about the shame that has fallen on Lu. We request that your state execute Prince Pengsheng and use his life to close the mouths of the world." Duke Xiang of Qi understood that Lu was giving him one last bit of face by asking only for a scapegoat. He immediately summoned Pengsheng. Pengsheng walked into the hall full of pride, thinking he was about to be rewarded. In front of the Lu envoy, Duke Xiang turned and shouted at him, "I ordered you to carefully escort the Lord of Lu home. How did you serve him? You let him die in the carriage? For this crime, death is not enough to pay." He ordered Pengsheng seized on the spot, dragged to the marketplace, and beheaded in public. As Pengsheng was being tied up, he shouted, "You slept with your own sister and caused the death of her husband. All of this was your doing as a foolish ruler. Now you push all the blame on me. If I die as a wronged ghost, I will not let you go." Duke Xiang did not want to hear another word. He covered his ears. The people around him saw this and pretended to laugh, brushing the matter aside. Pengsheng was executed, and Duke Xiang on one side expressed his thanks to the Zhou king, and on the other confirmed with him the exact date for welcoming the royal princess. As for Wen Jiang, the widow of Duke Huan, she was kept in Qi and was not sent back to Lu right away. Back in Lu, Shen Shu led Crown Prince Tong out of the city to receive the coffin. When they reached the bier, they first held a farewell ceremony according to the rites. Then, taking the moment, they had Crown Prince Tong succeed to the throne as Duke Zhuang of Lu. Shen Shu, Zhuan Sunshen, Prince Nei, Prince Yan, Cao Mo, and many other civil and military officials began to rebuild Lu's government under the new ruler. Duke Zhuang's older half-brother King Fu, his younger half-brother Ya, and his full younger brother Ji, all sought joined in managing state affairs. Shen Shu valued Shibo's insight very highly and especially recommended him as a senior officer, letting him take part in the core decisions. The next year was set as the first year of Duke Zhuang's reign. This was also the fourth year of King Zhuang of Zhou. After Duke Zhuang took the throne, he immediately called his ministers to discuss a very difficult problem. The Zhou king wanted to marry the royal princess to Duke Xiang of Qi, and this wedding was to be hosted by Lu. But now the situation was extremely awkward. Qi had killed the former ruler of Lu, and his widow was still being kept in Qi. People inside and outside the state all knew about this tangled and shameful story. If Duke Zhuang went to act as the master of ceremonies, both ritual and dignity would be hard to handle. Shibo first spoke one sentence that helped Duke Zhuang see the situation clearly. He said, "Our state of Lu now bears 3 great shames. Does my lord know what they are?" Duke Zhuang asked. "What 3?" Shibo listed them one by one. "First, our former ruler has already passed away, but the Son of Heaven has still not given him a posthumous title. In the underworld, he has no proper name and rank. That is the first shame. Second, the wife of our former lord has not returned from Qi. By ritual, she should come back to mourn, yet she remains in Qi. People talk about this. That is the second shame. Third, Qi is now our enemy in terms of justice, yet you are still in mourning and are expected to personally preside over Duke Xiang's wedding. If you refuse to go, you disobey the king. If you go, the world will say, Lu has no backbone. That is the third shame." Duke Zhuang listened and quickly asked, "Is there a way to remove these 3 shames, one by one?" Shibo said, "If we want others not to hate us, we must first build a good name. If we want others not to suspect us, we must first have a clear mind and plan of our own. When the former ruler took the throne, he never received open recognition from the Zhou king. Now we can use this chance of helping with the royal marriage to ask the Zhou king to grant a proper posthumous title to our late ruler. That way, he will have a clear name below the ground. This removes the first shame. As for the lady remaining in Qi, we can send a mission, according to the rites, to welcome her back and arrange for her to complete the mourning for our former lord in lieu. This will remove the second shame. The third one is the hardest, but there is still a way. Duke Zhang pressed him. What way? Shibo said, we can build a special residence for the royal princess outside the capital of Lu. When she arrives, she will stay in that place at the outskirts first. For this marriage, you will not personally go to greet or escort her. Instead, you will send your senior ministers to handle it. You will use your mourning as a reason to step back from the front of the ceremony. In this way, to the Zhou king, we are not refusing his command. To Qi, we have not broken the rights on the surface. To our own people, you are still a son who keeps proper mourning. The three shames are then taken apart from light to heavy, one by one. Duke Zhuang was deeply impressed and said, Shen Shu said before that you had great wisdom. Today, I see that it is true. After that, Duke Zhuang began to follow Shibo's plan step by step. First, he sent Minister Zhuang's son Xiang to the Zhou court. On one hand, Zhuang's son Xiang would escort the royal princess. On the other, he would present rich gifts and ask the Zhou king to grant the former ruler a posthumous title so that he would have a proper rank in the world below. King Zhuang of Zhou agreed and sent his own minister to Lu to formally name the former ruler Duke Wan. At first, the Zhou king had planned to send Duke Zhou Haijin as his envoy, but in the end, he did not use him. Instead, he sent another minister called Rongshu. Why did he not use Duke Zhou Haijin? There was a reason. The king's younger brother, Prince Qi, had once been greatly favored by their late father. On his deathbed, the old king had entrusted certain words to Duke Zhou Haijin, so that Duke and Prince Qi had always been close. King Yong of Zhou had long harbored doubts in his heart. He suspected that Duke Zhou Haijin might secretly support Prince Kai and cause some kind of struggle for the throne in the future. To prevent this, he left Duke Zhou Haijin out of the mission to Lu. When Duke Zhou Haijin realized he had been pushed aside, he understood that the ruler no longer trusted him. He thought to himself, if you are going to suspect me anyway, then I might as well do something to match your suspicion. He did not say this aloud, but his actions showed that this was how he felt. That night, he quietly went to Prince Ke's residence. There, he joined Prince Qi in planning a major move. They decided to take advantage of the day when the royal princess left the Zhou court for her marriage. On that day, the king would be busy with the wedding, and the palace and city would be full of noise and movement. They would secretly gather troops and launch a coup, kill King Zhuang of Zhou, and enthrone Prince Qi as the new son of heaven. Duke Zhuang of Lu first sent his minister Zhuan Xiang to the Zhou court to handle two tasks. The first task was to escort the royal princess, the daughter of the son of heaven, to Qi so she could marry Duke Xiang of Qi. Zhuan's son Sheng had to make sure she left the Zhou court safely and arrived in Qi without any trouble. The second task was to bring very rich gifts to King Zhuang of Zhou and make a formal request. Lu asked the king to grant a proper posthumous title to their late ruler, the former duke. The meaning was this: the former ruler of Lu had already died, but his name and rank were still not completely settled. They hoped that the Son of Heaven would officially recognize him so that his spirit underground could rest in peace and close his eyes without more worry. King Zhuang of Zhou accepted the gifts from Lu and understood their request. He agreed. He decided to give the former ruler of Lu an official title after death and sent one of his own ministers as an envoy to Lu to announce this in person. From that moment on, the late ruler of Lu could formally be called Duke Wan of Lu. This mission should have been an honorable job. By rank, it was the kind of thing that should be done by someone of high status. Duke Zhou Haijin even stepped forward and said he was willing to go. He wanted to personally carry this good news to Lu. But King Zhuang of Zhou did not want to use him. Instead, he chose another minister named Rongshu and told Rongshu to represent the Zhou court and go to Lu. The reason for not using Duke Zhou Haijin is written very clearly in the history. King Yuang of Zhou had a younger brother named Prince Qi. When their father was still alive, Prince Qi had been deeply loved. Before he died, the former king had privately entrusted some last words to Duke Zhou Haijin, so Haijin and Prince Qi were quite close. King Zhuang began to feel uneasy about this. He suspected that Duke Zhou Haijin might secretly favor Prince Qi, and might in the future work together with other states to help Prince Qi fight for the throne. Since the king did not trust him, he did not let him go out as envoy. He was afraid that Haijin might take the chance to link up with outside lords and cause trouble for him. When Haijin saw that he had been shut out, he understood at once that the ruler already doubted him. The more he thought about it, the worse he felt. In the end, he simply slipped out at night and went straight to Prince Ke's residence. There, the two of them shut the door and plotted together. They planned to use the day when the royal princess left the Zhou capital for her marriage. On that day, the city and the palace would be full of wedding business, and the guards would be more relaxed. They would gather troops inside the royal city and suddenly launch a coup, kill King Zhuang of Zhao, and put Prince Qi on the throne as the new son of heaven. Their plotting was meant to be secret, but they had not counted on others at court. One minister named Shinbo heard about it. He did not pretend he had heard nothing. He hurried to report it to King Zhuang. When King Zhuang heard the report, he was furious. He decided to kill at once. First, he had Duke Zhou Haijin arrested and executed. Then he drove his younger brother Prince Qi out of the Zhou capital and banished him so that he could no longer stay at court. Prince Qi, forced to leave, had no choice. He fled to the state of Yan and stayed there for the time being. We will leave the Zhou royal house here for the moment and go back to Luanqi. Minister Zhuan Sun Xiang, following Duke Zhuang's orders, first escorted the royal princess safely to Qi and saw her married to Duke Xiang. Once the princess entered Qi, that part of his mission was half complete. Then, Zhuan Sun Xiang carried out the second order from Duke Zhuang. He went to handle the matter of bringing back the late ruler's wife, Lady Jiang, the woman we have been calling Wen Jiang. The plan was to escort her back to the state of Luan, have her live there again in name so she could fulfill her duty of filial piety, mourn properly for the late Duke Huang, and complete the rites. When Duke Xiang of Qi heard that Lu wanted to bring Wen Jiang home, he was deeply unwilling to let her go. On one side, she was his sister in terms of family title, but in reality, their relationship had already gone far beyond that of brother and sister. On the other side, he also knew that this affair was already known everywhere. If he openly refused and forced Wen Jiang to stay in Qi, his reputation would sink even lower. So on the surface, he had to put on a generous face and agree to let Wen Jiang go back with the envoys from Lu. At the moment of parting, the two of them held hands and talked on and on. They kept saying things like, "We will see each other again in the future, and we will meet again one day." They repeated these words of meeting again many times. Only after they had said goodbye again and again, both in tears, did they finally wave and part. On Wen Jiang's side, her feelings were very tangled. On one hand, she could not bear to leave her brother, Duke Xiang. She had gotten used to the kind of life she had in Qi, a life that was wrong in terms of ethics, but full of indulgence and pleasure for her. She was attached to that relationship and attached to that way of living. On the other hand, she also clearly understood that what she had done went against human morals and common sense. She had once been the wife of the ruler of Lu, the Duchess of Lu, and yet she had this relationship with her own brother. On top of that, Duke Xiang had used tricks to kill her husband, Duke Guan of Lu. Now that she was supposed to go back openly to Lu, she herself felt she had no face left to show. So although in name she was returning to Lu, in her heart she did not want to go back at all. On the road, she sat in her carriage, moving a little and then stopping, going forward a short distance and then finding a reason to rest again. Her pace and her behavior were nothing like those of someone who misses home and longs to return. She was much more like a woman, being pushed forward by others while her heart keeps looking back. The convoy went on and reached a place called Zhou. There was a post station there, which we can think of as a roadside lodge, or it was kept very clean and tidy. When Jian looked around at the surroundings and at where this place was located, a thought came to her mind. She thought, "This place does not belong to Lu, and it does not belong to Qi. For me, it is just right. It is neither Lu nor Qi. It feels as if it was prepared especially for me." She called the envoy team to her and told them, After you return, tell Duke Zhao this. I am a woman who has lost her husband. By nature, I like quiet and ease. I do not like the formalities and troubles of palace life. I do not want to go back to live in the palace. If he really wants me to return, then he should wait until I am dead and send my coffin back. When the envoys returned to Lu, they passed Sun Jiang's words on to Duke Zhao. He understood clearly that she did not want to return to the Lu palace and that she did not have the face to go back to her old position. Duke Zhao also knew two things very well. In terms of family blood, when Jiang was his birth mother, in terms of justice and morality, she was the person who had taken his father's life. She was guilty of killing her husband. If he brought her back to Lu to live in the palace, even he himself would not know how to face her. So, he made a compromise. In a place in Lu called Jukyu, he had a residence built specially for Wen Jiang. It was like a separate lodge or secondary residence, and it was set aside for her to live in. From then on, when Jiang lived in this way, between Lu and Qi, sometimes she was in Qi, sometimes she was near Lu, but she did not return to live in the main palace of the Lu capital. She moved back and forth between the two states, never fully returning to Lu and never completely staying in Qi. Duke Zhao did not say much about her in public, but in ritual, he still left her some face. According to the seasons, he arranged for people to visit her at fixed times. In spring, summer, autumn, and winter, envoys went to offer greetings and comfort. In this way, he kept up the basic duty of a son. Later, when the court historians looked back at this story, they made a comment. From the side of feeling and blood, Wen Jiang was Duke Zhang's mother. From the side of morality and justice, she was the enemy who killed his father. If she had openly returned to the Lu capital and moved back into the palace, these two words, kin and foe, would have been twisted together and no one could explain them clearly. Letting her stay in a place between Lu and Qi was a helpless compromise. It allowed Duke Zhao to keep some basic filial piety, and at the same time spared him from having to see, every day, a person who was both his mother and his enemy. A man known as Ran Wang wrote a poem about this. The meaning was roughly this. A woman who has killed her own husband no longer has the face to return to her original home. She can only wander between Qi and Lu. If she truly forced herself to walk back into Lu, then the roles of relative and enemy would be completely mixed together in her body, and no one would be able to tell them apart. Having finished Wen Jiang's story, we now return to Duke Xiang of Qi. After Duke Xiang plotted the murder of Duke Wan of Lu, people throughout Qi talked about him. Everywhere, people were criticizing him. They said, the Lord of Qi really has no sense of right or wrong and no human ethics. What he has done is both immoral and against heaven. Duke Xiang himself did not say much, but in his heart, he felt guilty. On one side, he thought, I cannot let people keep cursing me like this. On the other, he tried to think of one or two things that looked morally upright so that he could win back the favor of his people and make them slowly forget his incest and his killing of another ruler. In his mind, he weighed two big events that had happened recently. One was that in Zheng ministers had killed their ruler. The other was that in Wei, they had driven out their original ruler. These were both major events that broke the old rights. Prince Qianmu of Wei was a son-in-law of the Son of Heaven, and Duke Xiang himself was just about to marry the royal princess and become a son-in-law of the Zhou king too. Duke Xiang thought, since I am going to be related to the Zhou court, I cannot afford to turn against another royal son-in-law like Prince Qianmu of Wei. I had better not go and punish Wei. He turned the thought around and said to himself, then I will choose the banner of avenging a murdered ruler. I will go punish Zheng for its crime of killing the lord. If I send troops against Zheng in the name of bringing justice for the former ruler, Duke Zhao of Zheng, then the other lords will see that I, the Lord of Qi, am standing up for the moral order of the world. They will fear me and respect me. But even then, Duke Xiang did not feel fully confident. He knew Zheng was not easy to handle. If he sent troops, they might win, but they might also fail. To be safe, he decided not to rush into war. Instead, he first used his mind and wrote to the current ruler of Zhen, Ziaiwei, asking him to come to a place called Shuzi to meet. On the surface, the purpose was to form an alliance, talk friendship, and sign a covenant. Zai Wei saw that the Lord of Qi had personally sent him an invitation to make an alliance and was delighted. He thought, Qi is a major power. If Duke Xiang is willing to befriend me, a new ruler, then my position at home will be stable. As long as Qi stands by me, other states will think twice before they make trouble. As Zai Wei prepared to go to Zhuzi, he felt that this meeting was extremely important. He decided to take 2 key ministers with him. One was Gao Qiumi, the other was Zhu. When Zhu heard about the plan, he immediately used illness as an excuse and said he could not go out. He did not want to go with them. At this point, another Zhang minister named Yuan Fan quietly went to see Zhu and asked him in a low voice, "Now that the new ruler is going to make an alliance with Qi, this is an important chance. In theory, you are a seasoned and steady minister. You should go with them to help make decisions. Why did you refuse so quickly and say you were ill?" Zhu then shared his judgment from his heart. He said, "The Lord of Qi has a fierce and hard nature. He relies on Qi being a powerful state and always feels he can press others down. Besides, he still keeps Duke Zhao of Zheng in his thoughts. Duke Zhao once helped Qi, and Duke Xiang has never been able to fully let go of his feelings toward him." At this point, Zhu pointed straight at what he most feared. When a great power and a small state deal with each other, it is almost never a pure blessing for the smaller side. When the big one makes friends with the small one, it is usually because he has some plan or some desire. For this meeting at Shuzi, I am afraid that our ruler and the ministers who go with him may not come back. Yuan Fan heard this and asked him another question. "In your view, who should really be ruler of Zheng?" Zhu answered, "Only Ziyi is fit. He has the bearing and attitude of a true ruler." When the late Duke Zhao of Zheng was alive, he said this himself. Hearing this, Yuan Fan felt even more respect for Zhu's insight. He said, "Many people say you are a man of great wisdom. Now, I can believe it." The day of the meeting at Shuzi finally came. Duke Xiang of Qi arrived early. He had made very careful preparations. He ordered 2 commanders, Prince Chengfu and Guan Zifu, to each bring a picked group of death warriors, around 100 men on each side, and had them stand by his left and right as personal guards, ready to strike at any time. Behind him, he also brought the powerful strongman Shi Zhifennu as a bodyguard at his back. On the other side, Gao Qiumi escorted Zai Wei. Following the ritual, they walked up onto the high earthen mound built for the covenant ceremony. When they reached the top, they first performed the bows and formal greetings facing Duke Xiang. At that moment, a courtier named Meng Yang stepped forward. He held a jade plate in his hands, and on the plate there was a bowl of animal blood. Kneeling below the mound, he invited the 2 rulers to follow the old rites and each sip a bit of blood, sealing their covenant with blood in the mouth to show that they would keep their word from this day on. Duke Xiang took one look at Meng Yang, and Meng Yang understood. He got up and quietly carried the blood bowl to the side. Right after that, Duke Xiang suddenly reached out and grabbed Zai Wei's hand. Staring straight into his eyes, he asked one very sharp question. "How did your former ruler, Duke Zhao of Zheng, die?" Zai Wei was stunned on the spot. The color drained from his face. He was so frightened that he could not get a word out. Gao Qiumi rushed forward to answer in his place. "Our former ruler died from illness. There is no need for you to ask too much, my lord." Duke Xiang said coldly, "What I heard was that on the winter day, when he went out for a ritual, he encountered evil men and died suddenly. That does not sound like an ordinary sickness." Seeing there was no way to hide it, Zhao Qiumi had to change his story. He had a long-standing, cold illness. On that day, he was startled by bad men, and the shock made the illness flare up and kill him. Duke Xiang pressed on. When a ruler goes out to perform rites, he is surrounded by guards and ministers. How could bad men suddenly appear? Where did these bad men come from? Gao Qiumi had to go on explaining. The struggle between the main son and the other sons for the position of heir had been going on for a long time. Each side had its own followers and its own faction. On that day, they took advantage of the big event and the large crowd to act. Who could have stopped them? Duke Xiang asked again, "Were those bad men ever caught?" Gao Qiumi said, "We are still investigating. Up to now, we have not found out who they were." At that, Duke Xiang could no longer hold back his anger. He raised his voice and said, "The killer is standing right in front of me. How can you talk about still investigating? You eat the ranks and salaries of your state, and you used your own private hatred to murder your ruler. Now, you stand in front of me and act as if you are in the right. Today, I will avenge your former ruler first." As soon as he finished speaking, he shouted to the strong man behind him, "Do it!" Shi Jifanu rushed forward at once and first had Gao Qiumi tied up. Gao Qiumi did not dare argue. He could only accept his fate. By now, Zhou was so terrified that he was kneeling on the ground, knocking his head against the earth again and again. He begged for his life and kept saying, "The whole matter was done by Zhao Qiumi alone. It has nothing to do with me. Please, for the sake of my rank as ruler, spare my life." Duke Xiang said, "Since you knew it was Gao Qiumi, why did you not have him seized and punished yourself? You knew your former ruler had been murdered by a minister, yet you still let that man stay in court and hold power. In this situation, do you still think you can stay alive? Today you will go down and explain all of this to your former ruler yourself." As soon as the words left his mouth, he waved his hand. Prince Chengfu and Guanzhifu led their death warriors up onto the earthen mound. They surged forward all at once and cut Zhou down on the spot. Zhou had brought many attendants with him, but when they saw the size of the key force and how fierce they were, none of them dared draw a sword to help. They all scattered and fled. Duke Xiang then turned to look at the bound Gao Qiumi and said, "Your ruler has died in front of me. Do you still expect to walk away alive?" Gao Qiumi answered, without hesitation, "I know I am deeply guilty. I only ask that you grant me death." Duke Xiang said, "If I give you just one stroke and let you die in an instant, that is too easy for you." He then ordered his men not to kill Gao Qiumi at Chuzi, but to take him back to the Qi capital. There, outside the south gate, he would be put to death by the most terrible punishment they had. This punishment was called chariot tearing. The method was this. The prisoner's head and forelimbs were tied to 5 different chariots. Each chariot was harnessed to an ox. The chariots were lined up facing 5 different directions. At the command, the drivers whipped the oxen hard and all 5 oxen rushed forward. The wheels turned together. The ropes snapped tight at the same time, and with that pull from all sides, the prisoner's body was torn apart into 5 pieces. Duke Xiang chose this method for Zhao Qiumi because he wanted to show everyone, both the lords of other states and the people of Qi, what happens to someone who dares to use his own private hatred to kill his ruler. In the end, this is the kind of death that waits for him. Duke Xiang of Qi killed Zheng's new ruler Ziwei on the spot at Chuzi and captured Zhao Qiumi alive, taking him back to Qi, planning to put him to death by the cruel punishment of chariot tearing. Next, the story first explains how this punishment worked. In old times, people had a saying, "torn apart by 5 oxen." It meant using 5 oxen to pull a person's body into 5 pieces while he was still alive. That picture is exactly what chariot tearing looked like. They would first tie the prisoner's head and forelimbs to 5 different chariots. Each chariot was then harnessed to an ox, and the chariots were lined up facing 5 different directions. At a shout, the drivers whipped the oxen, and all 5 oxen ran forward with all their strength. As the ropes snapped tight, the person would be pulled apart alive, the body torn into several pieces. At that time, this was seen as the heaviest and cruelest punishment that existed. This time, Duke Xiang of Qi chose this exact punishment for Gao Qiumi. Why did he do this? It was not just to vent his anger. In his mind, he was playing a much bigger game. He was thinking, I want to use this chance to put on the face of a man who acts for heaven and takes revenge for others. I want all the lords to see that I, the Lord of Qi, will never let a case of a minister killing his ruler go unpunished. If I do this well, I can build a reputation among the lords as someone who respects justice and values the rights. Then in the future, they will be more willing to trust me and rely on me. So he deliberately chose the harshest punishment. He made the scene as big as he could and let the news spread as far as possible. After the chariots had done their work, Gao Qumi was dead. His bones and flesh had been ripped into pieces. His body no longer looked like a human body. Duke Xiang then ordered his men to cut off Gao Qiami's head and hang it over the south gate of the key capital. The south gate was one of the main gates, with constant traffic. Everyone entering or leaving the city only had to lift their eyes to see that head. Beside the gate, he also had a large notice posted in clear writing. The basic message was this: from now on, anyone who dares to rebel, to turn against his ruler, to think about killing his lord, should look carefully at what happened to this head. As for the rest of the body that had been torn to pieces by the chariots, those bits and broken parts could not be hung up on the city gate. Duke Xiang gave another order. All those scattered limbs were to be gathered up and taken out of the city, to be buried together outside the east wall. The meaning was clear. This man could not be buried inside the city, and could not be buried in any honorable place. His remains had to be thrown farther away, as a final insult. Even after all this, Duke Xiang of Qi did not feel his work was finished. He also wanted Zheng to know what had happened, and wanted to use this chance to give himself a proper and justified explanation. So he sent an envoy to Zhen to report the news. The message he sent was laid out, step by step. First, he brought out the name of the Son of Heaven. He said, "For those traitor ministers and rebellious sons who dare to kill their rulers and rebel against their lords, the king of Zhou has long set the heaviest punishments." This time, Gao Qiyume of Zhen was the main plotter. He led the way in killing your former ruler and then forced a son of a secondary wife onto the throne. This is a great crime. Second, he explained Duke Xiang's attitude. When our ruler, the Lord of Qi, heard that your former ruler had been killed, he felt deep pain. He believed this was something that could not be ignored. So at Shuzi, he seized them and put them to death on the spot, removing for you a pair of men who harmed their own state. Third, he offered a suggestion, which in truth was also a demand. Now that the man who killed your ruler is dead, we hope the state of Zheng will quickly select and install a new ruler. Our state of Qi is willing to make peace with you again and return to the friendly ties we once had. When this letter arrived in Zheng, the ministers of Zheng soon learned what had happened. Yuan Fan listened to the whole story and could not help letting out a sigh. He said, "I truly cannot compare to the wisdom of Zhou." Why did he say this? Because earlier, Zhou had already judged that this trip to Shuezi to meet the Lord of Qi would be very dangerous for Zai Wei, that his life might be at risk. That was why Zhou had claimed to be ill and refused to go. Now everything showed he had been right. Zai Wei was dead. Gao Qiumi had been taken away to be torn apart by chariots in front of everyone, and only Zhou remained safe and unharmed. In this situation, the former ruler of Zheng was dead. The newly installed ruler Zai Wei had also died at Zhuzi, and the court suddenly had no one on the throne. Many ministers in the state could only gather together to discuss whom to set up as the new ruler. At this point, a minister named Shuzan put forward a suggestion that on the surface sounded quite natural. He said, "Our earlier ruler, Duke Li, is still in Lu. After all, he was once the ruler. Why not send people to bring him back?" His meaning was simple. Since the current ruler was dead and the earlier ruler was still alive, why not invite the earlier one back to sit on the throne again? When Zhou heard this suggestion, he immediately shook his head. He said, "A ruler who has been driven out of his country carries a stain. He is someone who has already been forced down. If we invite such a man back and let him once more sit under the ancestral tablets in the ancestral temple, we will shame the spirits of our ancestors and insult the temple a second time. For the state and for our forefathers, this is not good." Then he gave his own view. "It is better to set up Ziyu." Yuan Fan heard this and felt it made sense. He supported Jizhu's opinion, so they fixed their choice on Ziyi. At that time, Ziyi was not in Zheng, he was in the state of Chen. After the leading ministers had agreed, they sent envoys to Chen to invite Ziyi back in a formal way and ask him to become the new ruler of Zheng. Ziyi returned to Zheng and officially took the throne. At this point, the power structure in Zheng was reshaped. Jizhu became the upper grand minister, the highest rank among the ministers. Shuzan became the middle grand minister. Yuan Fen became the lower grand minister. These three men, one at the top, one in the middle, and one at the lower level, formed the new backbone of the Zen court. Zai himself knew very clearly that although he now held the title of ruler, the man with real experience, planning ability, and the power to steady the situation was still Zhou. So as soon as he took the throne, he turned almost all the important matters of war and government over to Zhou. He acted more like the face at the front, while questions like, how do we calm the people? How do we slowly make the state rich again? And how do we make daily life better for ordinary people were left for Zhou to think about and carry out. Zhou did not refuse. Once he accepted this power, he began to comfort the people on one side and adjust internal policies on the other, hoping to slowly restore the strength of the state and lead Zhang out of the long spell of civil strife, external wars, and repeated changes on the throne. Next, Zai did something else that was very important. He brought Zhang back into the network of surrounding states. He sent envoys to Qi, to Chen, and to other states to formally announce that Ziyi had taken the throne in Zing. The message was that Zing once again had a settled ruler, and that when others dealt with Zing from now on, they should address themselves to the new Duke. In addition, Zhen accepted an order from the king of Shu and promised that from now on, every year, they would offer tribute to Shu. That meant that each year, they would send goods to the king of Shu. In name, Zhen now became a subordinate state under Shu, or in other words, a small state that had to listen when the king of Shu spoke. Shu was a great power. By sheltering under Chu's protection for a while, Zhen could hope to avoid some trouble. In all this movement back and forth, Duke Li, who had been stirring things up from Lu, completely lost his chance to return. Earlier, he had strengthened the walls of Lu, dug deep ditches around the city, stockpiled weapons, and drilled his soldiers. All of this had been done with one dream in mind. One day, he would use this power to fight his way back to the capital of Zhen. But now, the situation inside Zhen had changed. There was a new ruler on the throne. Zheng had spoken clearly with Qi and Chen, and had accepted a top and bottom relationship with Chu. To the outside world, it now had a strong patron. Inside, it had an experienced elder like Zhou running things. In such a situation, no matter how Duke Li struggled in Lu, he could no longer find a good path back to the capital. Slowly, he became more and more marginal, pushed to the edge. From this moment on, the situation inside Zheng, at least on the surface, finally began to calm down. The common people once again had a ruler they could recognize. The court had a fixed group of ministers to run the state. Outside, Zhen had the cover of a powerful protector. That stretch of time, when rulers were changed again and again, ministers killed their lords, and dukes fled into exile, could be said to have come to a temporary end. We will continue next episode. Chinese culture mini lesson. How did people wash their faces in ancient China? Have you ever wondered about this? If we time traveled back to ancient China, to a world with no facial cleansers, no cleansing devices, what would we actually use to wash our faces? Would we really just scoop up a handful of well water and rub it on twice at random? Or were people in the past actually much more refined than we imagine? That is what we are going to talk about today. What exactly did people in ancient times use to wash their faces? Once you follow this timeline, from the Tang and Song dynasties all the way to the Ming and Qing, you will realize that behind this tiny daily act, there is a whole history of ancient skincare. After listening, you may even feel that their cleansing routine was just as sophisticated as our modern vitamin C in the morning and vitamin A at night. As you listen, I hope some images come to mind. For example, an early morning courtyard, a square stone well, and a young woman sitting beside it, carefully wiping her face with rice washing water. Or a Song dynasty boudoir, where a pale piece of soap bean rests in a dressing box, and young women crush it, mix it with water, and smooth it gently over their faces. If we really went back there, we might be surprised to find that they cared about cleansing and skincare at least as much as we do. Let us start with the simplest and gentlest cleansing method: washing with rice water. Rice washing water sounds humble. It calls to mind a mother in the kitchen, bending over the sink and rinsing rice before cooking. But in ancient times, it was not just leftover cloudy water from cooking. It was a very real, natural facial cleanser. People even gave it an elegant name. They called it jade face lotion. In the classic texts, the Book of Rites, It clearly says this. In old times, people washed their hair every 3 days. On those hair washing days, they would also wash their faces. And what did they use on their faces? Rice washing, water. Why? Because the first bowl of rice water contains a very slight amount of rice bran acid. It helps remove oil from the skin. If we put it in modern terms, it has a very mild fruit acid effect. It gently renews the surface of the skin and makes the face look whiter and brighter. Of course, people back then did not know words like vitamin B or amino acid cleanser, but through experience, they clearly knew one thing. If you wash your face with rice water, your skin becomes whiter, cleaner, and finer. This little life hack spread from before the Qin dynasty and lasted all the way to the Ming and Qing. It went on for thousands of years. You can picture this. A young girl in the Song dynasty sits on a small embroidered stool. In front of her is a warm green porcelain basin filled with rice washing water. She dips a piece of silk into the water and presses it lightly on her face. Outside the window, the sunlight filters softly through gauze, falling on her pale and clear skin. That quiet, gentle moment is actually her beauty time. Rice washing water was also surprisingly eco-friendly. One bowl of rice serves 2 purposes. You can cook it and you can use it for skincare. Even a modern environmentalist would nod in approval. But rice water is only the beginning. The true national cleanser of ancient China was actually soap pod and plant ash. When we mention soap pod today, many people think first of old-style shampoo, but people in the past not only used it to wash their hair, they washed their faces with it too. Soap pod naturally contains saponins. Once you rub it with a bit of water, it produces foam. It was basically an ancient natural foaming agent. Its cleaning power was strong. It could lift away oil and dirt very effectively. In the farming manual, Essential Techniques for the Common People from the Northern and Southern Dynasties, there are clear records that praise the powerful cleaning effect of soap pod. Imagine this. In ancient times, people would crush soap pods, add a little water, and stir. It would immediately turn into a slightly sticky cleansing liquid. After washing, the face would feel thoroughly clean. You could say it was similar to a modern amino acid cleanser, but the scent would have been more herbal, more raw, and much more down to earth. Even more legendary than soap pod though, was plant ash. What is plant ash? It is the gray powder left after burning plants to ash. It sounds crude, but it is rich in potassium carbonate. It is strongly alkaline, and its cleaning power is on par with early soaps. In fact, it truly influenced the later invention of soap. Before the Tang dynasty, the most common way to wash the face was to mix plant ash with water. After washing, the face would feel extremely clean, even so clean that it squeaked when you touched it. That squeaky clean feeling was probably what people back then thought of as true freshness and clarity. If you know elderly people from some rural areas, especially in the Northeast, you may notice that some of them still call soap sao zai, a dialect word. That way of speaking is a leftover trace from the age when people used plant ash. At this point, you may already feel that people in ancient times were not dirty and careless at all. They actually had a good sense of how to live well. But the most powerful, most widespread, and longest-lasting cleansing product in old China might surprise you. It was pig pancreas fat. Yes, pig pancreas. Do not worry. Let us unpack it slowly. A pig's pancreas looks like a long, pale pink strip. Old books stress one point. Inside it are many digestive enzymes that can break down dirt. In modern language, it is a natural cleaning enzyme. It can break down oils and can be used both for face washing and bathing. The history of using pig pancreas goes way back. Essential Techniques for the Common People already recorded its cleansing effect 1500 years ago. By the Tang and Song dynasties, pig pancreas was not only used directly, but had evolved into a real cosmetic product, what people called soap bean or pig pancreas soap. The method was simple but clever. You chopped the pancreas into small pieces, mixed it with plant ash, kneaded it into balls or blocks, and dried them in the sun. When they hardened, you got one of the earliest face-washing soaps. People of that time wanted it to be more fragrant and more beautiful, so they sometimes added clove, borneol, angelica dohertica, clam powder, and even donkey hide gelatin. It sounds like making a high-level medicinal formula, but in fact it was for beauty, fragrance, and skin nourishment. Young women in the Song dynasty used exactly this kind of beauty version, pig pancreas soap. Even the famous physician's son, Simao, praised it. He wrote that it could make the skin bright, clean, and moist, and that it could help remove bad smells and blemishes. In other words, the face became cleaner and clearer, and even acne would be reduced. If you picture another scene, a noble lady from the Song dynasty sits before her mirror. In her dressing box, there are small jars of fragrance, combs, and tools. In the most important compartment rests a small creamy white lump. This is the face-washing soap made from soap pod, spices, and pig pancreas fat. For her, its fragrance and feel were probably as precious as our so-called miracle toners and essence waters today. At this point, you may ask, what happened later? How did people move from pig pancreas soap to the modern bar soap we are familiar with? This takes us into the soap industry boom of the Ming and Qing dynasties. People in the Song first invented the mixed soap of soap pod and pig pancreas, called yezi. By the Ming and Qing, this product had grown into a true industry. In the large cities, there were workshops that specialized in making yezi and selling it all over the country. By the late Qing period, there was a famous cosmetic shop in Beijing called Wahanchen. It sold all kinds of powders, scent balls, and cleansing products. Its most popular items were yezi and fragrant powders. This shop started from the late Ming and continued operating into the Republic of China. That is about 400 years. It was a real old national brand. Imagine another moment. In Republican Beijing, a young lady stands at the counter of Wahanchen. On the counter are neat rows of fragrant soaps, yezi, and powders. As she chooses, the shop assistant behind the counter tells her, "This batch is the newest. We used better fragrances. After you wash your face, it will look brighter." That old-fashioned yet slightly modern atmosphere was actually very romantic. Finally, let us end with a very down-to-earth story, one that also has a strong visual feel. In the classic A New Account of Tales of the World, there is a small scene. One day, Wayne Dunn is using the toilet at home. A maid from the princess's household comes in carrying dry dung and dung pellets. Do not panic. These are not what those names make us think of today. They were small pellets made of aromatic substances, used to absorb odor. Dry dung was placed in the toilet to soak up the smell. Dung pellets were used for washing the hands, like scented soap, but Wang Dun did not know this. He thought they were snacks. Right there on the spot, he popped some into his mouth and even said they tasted sweet. Can you imagine the maid's shock? That "what are you eating" feeling probably has not changed in 1,000 years. Looking back at everything we have just gone through, we can see that ancient cleansing methods were much more systematic, detailed, and even romantic than we might have guessed. They used rice washing, water, soap pod, plantash, and pig pancreas soap. Behind each method, there is a trace of its era and a piece of practical wisdom. If you close your eyes now and call up those images once more, a basin of warm rice water, a fragrant bar of handmade soap, a Song dynasty woman sitting by the window to do her makeup, you may realize that washing the face itself was part of a way of life. It was a way for people in the past to stay neat, fresh, and comfortable in their own skin. And all the bottles and jars in our bathrooms today, in a sense, are just extensions of those old ideas. So the next time you wash your face, you might think for a moment about this link between you and people from long ago. After all, we are the same, in one simple way. We all want to greet each new day feeling clean, refreshed, and just a little bit beautiful.
The sky in light, Nua healed the broken heart. Fuxi traced the world's design. Every age leaves stories bright. Yaya dynasty eye-shaped bronze. Xiang dynasty cast oracle bones. Thou dynasty built right. Qin dynasty forged the great walls. Han dynasty opened Silk Road winds. Three Kingdoms dynasty turned war to tales. Qin dynasty led ink and mountains bloom. Sui dynasty carved the Grand Canal. Tang dynasty crowned the world with art. Song dynasty raised learning's flame. Yuan dynasty swept the northern plains. Ming dynasty strengthened walls again. Qing dynasty closed an ancient end. Every age leaves stories bright. History and myth ignite in endless light. China's history moves in mystery through the night. Footsteps of this land enchant the world in light. Han dynasty opened Silk Road winds. Three Kingdoms dynasty turned war to tales. Qin dynasty led ink and mountains bloom. Sui dynasty carved the Grand Canal. Tang dynasty crowned the world with art. Song dynasty raised learning.